Lift off.
Hey, everybody. Mark and Tony here. Property Management Success Podcast with Property Management Aid Station. Mark, how is it going?
Good.
And I would hope so. I just saw you like 5 minutes ago.
That's right. Yeah. And my hair still doesn't look as good as yours.
I had to go let my dog out. So,
Let's be honest. You just ran a marathon and you're not out of breath at all. And you're back in the seat.
back.
Yay.
Last time we touched on a topic about growing a business, expanding a business, and then we kind of closed out with taking that business owner from being the guy or the gal that's doing it themselves to creating a team, creating a business. And I thought it would be a little bit interesting to kind of unpack your journey and your thoughts about how it went for you, and if you were to redo that journey today, what you might do differently in being able to step out from being the guy and building that team, and what it takes to continue to build that team. Because you and I have had conversations off camera just about some of the complexities and difficulties about running a business, running a team, stepping away from being the property manager, having to step back in when team members leave, and then as easily as you can step back out. So, yeah. So, what was your story about getting into the business, and how did that evolve for you?
Yeah. I'm going to tell a quick story about that. I was sitting in a conference room across the table from a man about my same age, and I started crying. This is the first time I'd ever met him. I felt ridiculous, but I was at my wit's end. I was at the end of the rope, and I don't think I'd really fully realized it until that moment. Fortunately for me, that man ended up being Richard Shope, who is my director of operations and has been with me 9 years now. But I had been in a cycle of working until 2, 3 a.m. in the morning, multiple times per week, and I didn't realize how close I was to real total system failure and burnout I was at that point. And the scary thing was I couldn't afford Richard. And but I knew if I didn't do something dramatic that I was going to crash out. And so everything changed. Miraculously for me, I brought Richard on. I felt like I was going to run out of money. But the incredible thing that I've learned, at least about me, up into this point in my business growth, is that every time I bought back my time, magically I found a way to create more value with that time and energy. There's a really good book about this.
Dan Martell.
What's it called?
Dan Martell, Buy Back Your Time.
Buy Back Your Time.
Yep.
And it's got some real practical ways of thinking about it, some actual numbers and ratios and things like that. Yeah, man. If I hadn't reached that point, and if I hadn't met Rich at that time, I don't know where I'd be. But everything shifted at that point because I was able to go do more business development and crawl out of that hole very quickly. And then when I hired the next strategic hire and I bought back even more of my time, I was able to elevate myself even further and do more business building. And then eventually, fast forward 9 years, I'm now working to hire people to buy back Rich's time. Because the more time he spends working on the business versus in the business, the better we get, the more stable things are, the more profitable we are, and the cycle repeats.
I was on a call earlier with a business owner, and we were in one of our coaching sessions, and he was talking about how they were billing back a utility, and it was a husband and wife team, and they were billing back utilities, and they were adding a $3 processing fee for billing back that utility. And so we started analyzing that. What did it cost them for them to be the ones that were billing back utilities to the clients? And they were offering that as a service as part of their, of course, in property management, we will handle your utilities and we will transfer the utilities and we will take your bills and then pay them and then get the money back from you through the rent. And we were talking about the fact that, yeah, they were making an extra $3, but as a business owner, they should be, whether it's $100 an hour, $200 an hour, $300 an hour, whatever, wherever you're at, it's costing you every cent or every dollar you make performing a lower level activity than what you should be. It's costing you the difference between the two. So if you're doing
Yep.
15 or 20, if you're doing $20 an hour work and you really should be doing $100 an hour work, that's costing you $80 an hour. And think about what you could have done for your business with that additional $80. And it's not going to come out of nowhere. You have to do the $100 an hour work then if you're going to be able to have that $80 delta to improve your business. But a lot of people don't look at it that way. They look at it as, I'm saving $20 by doing this myself.
Yeah, it's a wrong way of thinking. There's a term for this that we use in economics. It's called opportunity cost.
Yep.
It's the cost of the activity or the choice you're making measured as the next best alternative foregone. And the irrational thinking around opportunity cost, I think, is the number one enemy to small business owners turning the corner from self-employed to being an actual business owner, reclaiming their time, experiencing time and financial freedom. It is a massively impactful principle. Alex Hormozy once said that he was at a conference and the person on the stage said, how much money would you invest to stop losing $1 million a year? And the guy's point was, everyone in this audience has the potential of making $1 million a year. And before anyone's listening to this just dismisses that idea, fill in the blank on the number. 50% more than you're making right now. You have the potential of making that amount of money. How much would you invest? How much would you spend to stop losing that every year? And that's a fascinating question, because if you could argue successfully, and I think you could if you tried, that once you unlock that higher earning potential, you have access to that for the rest of your life. So that's an annuity that never ends. If you ever took Finance 101 and you calculated the net present value of that annuity, it is enormous. In fact, I think I know it. I think I remember the equation. Let's say you could increase your income by $50,000 a year by thinking differently, by getting out of your way, by like investing in the knowledge that would help you or the tools that would get you out of your own way. It's a huge number. If you could increase, you should be willing to spend $500,000 on the solution that will unlock perpetual $50,000 increased income to you from now for the rest of your life. That's the present value of that thing at a 12% discount. At a 20% discount, it's probably different. But anyway, I don't want to get too into the weeds. We underinvest in ourselves first. We underinvest in the tools, the resources. Knowledge, I think, is the most undervalued thing. Alex Hormozy, another example, he said that he wanted at one point to grow a social media following. And so he's in his book, if you read his book, $100 Million Offers, he said, I did what I always do. I paid for knowledge. I paid $120,000 for 4 phone calls with a guy that had the exact audience I wanted to build. Have you ever dreamed of paying $30,000 for a 1-hour phone call? Well, of course not. But why would Alex Hormozy do such a crazy thing? Because that unlocked something that made him far more money than that.
Yeah.
Rant over.
Yeah, I mean, it's the truth. We get so bogged down in doing the thing and keeping our head down in staying on the bicycle, pedaling, that we don't look up to see that we're going down the wrong road. And if we could invest in, looking up and investing in a different direction, we could get off the bicycle and have somebody else driving us around in the back of a car. I mean,
That sounds
it's
good.
yeah. So take me on that. So go back to that journey you were talking about. So you had brought on your director of operations. Do you remember about how many doors you were at that point?
Probably like 180.
Yeah, there's this sweet spot where it seems like people get to about that 100 mark, and then they're like, I need 80 to 100, and they've got to bring in somebody else. They got to bring in somebody to help them, but they don't bring in somebody high level. They bring in somebody that they can just dump stuff off to. And when they bring that person in, again, it's in no offense to anybody, because we all have to start somewhere, right? But they bring in a lower performer, and then they don't train them, and then their life is still as stressful as it was before. But now
Yeah.
they have additional payroll
And
that
they
they
come
have
to
to
the
cover.
and they come to the false conclusion, well, that didn't work. I already tried that.
Nobody else can do it like me, right?
Yeah.
They're like, I've tried it. I'm the only one that can process rents because I
And
need to
I'm
make sure
stuck.
they're accurate. I'm the
It's
only one that can bring on new doors because
Yep.
I'm the only one that knows about the services we provide.
It's not true.
I'm
It's
the
not
only
true,
one
by
that
the
can
way.
coordinate maintenance because I know the properties and I have the relationship with the vendors. And so they get
It's
stuck in this. I'm the only one that can do it.
it's good and bad news that that's not true. The good news is there's a path to freedom. The bad news is you might have to extricate your self-worth from your usefulness in its current state.
Oh my God, you hit. So I want to talk about this. So my original real estate company was called Cliff Dwellers Real Estate, and it was we did a lot of business in downtown Denver with the high rise lofts, condos, warehouse conversions. So the Cliff Dwellers thing
Sounds
was
schwanky.
yeah, it was really nice. It was really a lot of fun. I used to tell people when they would call me to talk about property management, I would tell them, if my office is right here in downtown. I could walk to your unit, or I could have somebody from my company be in your property in 7 minutes. And if it's too far to walk, it's too far. But if I could walk to your unit and have somebody there, why would you go with anybody else? Like,
Love
I
it.
am your downtown guy. And we
I love how
we
you made this completely unnecessary condition in the person's mind that walking there gave you some kind of advantage. But go on.
well, it actually, I mean, you're right. You're creating your uniques, right? That was one of the
Yes.
unique things about us. One of the other things, though, was it was true because you'd have property managers like I don't know, say Mark Cunningham from Grace Property Management out in Thornton, Colorado. He would try to drive down or send one of his people to downtown Denver that are down there about twice a month, and they'd drive the wrong way down a one-way street, wouldn't know where to park for the loading docks to get people moved in, and so yeah, I threw a dig at Mark just because he's a good friend of
Wow, you
mine.
just threw a dig at like one of the heroes of our industry,
I
and
sideswiped him.
you just also opened my eyes to the fact that maybe he violated his own rule. He didn't have 5% penetration, and he went out his market.
Yeah, see, bringing it back. But yeah, so I created this brand and this identity that I was the downtown guy, and I built this moat around our business that I wouldn't go across I-25, wouldn't go south of Colfax, I wouldn't go like east of Park Ave, and so I created this little moat, an area that was my identity, and then all of a sudden we got to a certain size, and like you mentioned, I wanted to scale beyond my current market penetration. I should have just stayed focused in there, but we rebranded to Home Vault Property Management, and then that allowed me to take Home Vault and expand into some other markets through some mergers and acquisitions, and we wound up in multiple states. I was never so miserable as when I had those partners and that merger, part of it was because I lost control. We wound up with multiple partners, but the other part was I had lived my life for 17 years running a business where my identity was tied to the value I was providing to a specific clientele.
Yep.
And then I changed that, and I was no longer the downtown guy, and I was no longer the company that was putting out 14,000 8-page tabloid-sized newsprint newspapers and a postcard every 21 days to owners that own property in that marketplace. I became just another one of these property managers in Denver, Colorado, and trying to separate my self-worth from the value I was providing. Took a while. It took a while for me to figure out how to pivot and create value in a different way, where my what I did for work and how much money I made and the size portfolio and the market penetration and all of that was not really tied to my personal identity anymore. It was something I did, not who I was.
Yeah, I think this is a really powerful idea. And I wouldn't be surprised if most people experience this. Attaching identity, maybe even, attaching some sense of self-worth to a certain thing about our work, right? And when we find or when we discover that it becomes an inhibitor to us or some kind of a constraint, and some friends or God helps us just see it for what it is, and we throw it off. It's one of those breakthroughs that that raises the ceiling for us. By the way, I bet it was no small loss that you couldn't drive to work anymore with your hair blowing in the wind singing Uptown Girl anymore.
Yeah.
Like you had to shift your whole identity. You weren't that downtown boy anymore.
Yep. I was not the downtown boy anymore. Yep, you're right. Yeah. I like how you worked that in. That was nice.
I got to use the restroom really quick. Can we put a pause? You got to cut that part out. Or are we almost wrapping up?
Well, no, we're going to go a little bit longer because I want to talk about the canyon, but I'm going to give you the opportunity to take a bathroom break, but we're going to continue to keep dead air in the podcast until Mark returns. So this will be
real live. This is a real live aid station, folks.
Yeah.
Sometimes Tony's at the counter alone, handing out the goos and the gels. Why don't you monologue? I'll be right back. We won't say why I'm leaving.
Okay, Mark has to go to the bathroom. He'll be right back. Okay, well, we will most likely trim this out, but in the event that we don't, one of the things that I wanted to touch on a little bit more about that identity, one of the things that I noticed after I sold my company, we merged it, and then we sold the entire organization, the company that was operating in multiple states. We sold that to one of the big aggregators, and I went to work for them, and I went to work for them in their acquisitions department. And in that acquisitions department, initially my role was just continue to go to conferences, just continue to talk to people, network. A lot of people just have conversations, and if the conversation about selling your property management company comes up, then you can let them know why you sold and what it might look like if they sold to the company that bought mine. And what I learned through that process is that a lot of people do get really close to that deadline, the finish line. They want to sell. They're either of that age that they're looking for what's the next transition, who's going to take this over. I either want to retire, or I'm burnt out, or it's not working, or whatever. And they get really close. And we saw a lot of people who were interested in having those conversations back off in having those conversations and not moving forward with a transaction because it felt like, to quote a few of them, they were selling their baby, and their identity was really tied up into the company. And if they didn't have that company, who would they be? And so I want to just encourage everybody that your business is something that's supposed to provide for you and your family and provide options for you, and it should feed your personal goals. And those are the things that you should really stay focused on, is how does this business serve me personally? What can I get out of owning this business?
Don't
How
worry,
does
I'm
it
back.
I was just about to make a point,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
but I don't remember what. No. So having the business fuel your personal goals and stay focused on that, so that when you do get to the point where you're at a position of either stepping away and transitioning out by sale, or just pulling out of the day to day and just becoming the business owner, you're not so tied up with your identity being, I am the property management guy, I am the contact that my clients need to call, I am the sole problem solver for the business. It's more about stepping away, detaching from the identity of having the company be who you are, and have the company be something that you built so that it can fuel who you actually are.
Did 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 I leave for like 3 minutes and you turned our entire podcast into a commercial for you? Is that what just happened?
I should have done that. I did not do that. You'll have to listen back. You'll have to actually listen to one of our episodes to see what I said. But now that you're back, let's actually transition into
You were
a
really
commercial.
going there. I think, man, you should monologue more often. You were all into that, and you were like kind of passionate about it. Like I could see it in your eyes. You were really into that one. That was good.
Well, I was just sharing that
Uh-huh.
the business should fuel our personal goals, not have the business become who we are. The business
Thank
should
you.
fuel the things that define who we are.
Yeah, the business should pay for all the ultra marathons, both in money and time, not the other way around.
So let's talk about this a little bit. Let's
Oh,
talk
you're
about
holding the coin.
Grand Canyon.
Grand Canyon. Let's do
I
it.
wanted to start with this last episode and we didn't, and then we didn't end it with it, and then I was going to start with it this time and we didn't. So before we get off, let's talk a little bit about our experience in the Grand Canyon,
Yeah.
taking 25 of our peers in the property management industry, taking them to the top of the Grand Canyon, across the bottom, across the Colorado River, and then out the other side, all in a single day, 25 miles.
On our next episode.
I love it. People are going to be like, you guys have been
We're-
talking about this
We're
Grand Canyon
already
thing for 6 months.
hear me out here. We're 23 minutes into this one.
Yeah.
Like this is going to be some good stuff. You know what I
Okay.
mean?
All right.
Like maybe we should go for a triple.
Okay. So I guess we're done. Mark is wrapping it up. We missed the cutoff for this aid station, so
We're
we're
going
wrapping
for a
it up.
triple. This is going to be so good that you're going to want to be fresh for this one.
All right. Well, then let's get him out of here. Man, you are good at the tease thing. You first you take a break, you go to the bathroom. You're like, when we come back, right after this commercial break, right after we will get deep into the meat of the episode. Right after we come back.
Yeah, we'll be back. Hit up our next episode. It's going to be fantastic. The Grand Canyon was magical. See you there.
Oh, nice. We'll see you then.